because of the weekend. So that's a lot to cover in this video, and I'm gonna try to do it all. And I do have some notes next to me here just in case I don't want to forget anything important. So if you happened to be there this past weekend, let me know in the comments because I want to hear your opinions as well. Okay. So the first thing that I want to mention, the first highlight for me was the food. The food. Oh, and I should also mention that throughout this video, I'm most likely going to try to include photos and videos. So keep an eye out for that as this video is happening, unless you are trying to fall asleep, in which case keep your eyes closed and pay no mind to any additions to this video. But if you're interested in seeing any of the things that I will be talking about, just know that I will be trying to include some additional content into this video when I go back and edit, okay? So anyway, the food was spectacular. And that means a lot coming from me because, as many of you know, I do not eat meat and I do not eat dairy for the most part. I try very hard to stick to a regimented, plant-based, vegan diet. That doesn't mean that I am 100% successful 100% of the time, but it is always my goal wherever I go to eat fully plant-based where it's possible, right? And now I'm going to be speaking just from my own personal experience. So there could be plenty of festivals out there that have great plant-based options, but for me, I haven't been to many where that's been the case, right? So I noticed a huge difference at Osheaga in the quality and quantity of food options for myself. In fact, I was overwhelmed by how many food options I had when I was there and almost wanted to map out my days just so I could try everything. And that's not normally the case. The last year of Firefly, I didn't struggle, but there were like one or two things that I could eat, and so I would have those things every day, and they were expensive and not very filling. And here at Osheaga, I had so many options, and I wasn't able to even try everything before I left, despite trying something new every day. This was a 3-day festival, by the way. And, yeah, so lots of incredible food options, and I'll put some pictures in. I'm trying to remember exactly what I had. The first day I had a vegan banh mi with tofu. That was incredible. There were some really good keto smoothies that had like cocoa and macadamia nut milk, peanut butter, strawberries, like fresh fruit, banana, and that was quite filling. What was the other thing I got? I got this rice bowl that was like tofu and fresh veggies and rice. I had a plant-based fried chicken burrito. I had vegan poutine. I think a few other things too, but everything I got seemed places where I'm going to be happy with the purchase and I'm going to be full and all of that. So anyway, I just was so taken aback by how good the food was, and I know my friends, some are plant-based, some are not. Regardless of what was ordered and purchased, everyone thought the food was great. And so I just can't emphasize how rare that has been in my experience, okay? And again, I have not been to every festival. I've only been, in the last 10 years, I've been to about 10 music festivals, so there are probably others that have good food options, and I just haven't been there yet, so I'm not trying to knock all of the other festivals in the world, right? But just in my own personal experience, I was shocked. Just totally shocked. And not only was the food filling, but it didn't make me feel sick after. You know how sometimes you have like a crappy festival food and you're left feeling tired or like heavy in a bad way, or like your stomach's all messed up? None of that. I felt good. I felt really good by everything I had. So anyway, I am going on and on about the food, but again, you can't imagine how hard it can be sometimes to find a good plant-based dish. And don't get me wrong, like everything at a place like this is going to be pricier than usual, but that is the case literally everywhere. I didn't find the prices to be outrageous in comparison to other festivals or other restaurants for that matter, given the prices of inflation and just how crazy expensive everything is everywhere you go. So I wasn't going to complain about that. Okay, that's enough on the food. Okay. What else? Oh my gosh, another thing that I was super impressed by were the measures that were taken for crowd safety. And in particular, like the festival's ability to prevent crowd crush. And so what I mean by crowd crush is when there are too many people in a space, like at a concert, at a set, and people get really excited and they like rush towards the front, and people get hurt that way. They get really hurt and they can die, if not get very badly injured. So it's a serious thing. It's a big deal. Crowd management is really important. I've seen some places do it well and some places do it terribly, and this was the first time I've seen it in a way that I thought was like truly brilliant. And again, this is just my perspective. Other places could be doing this, but it's the first time I've seen it at a festival, and this was the case for every single stage. And there were 4 big stages. I think there were some smaller ones, but of the 4 stages that I was going back and forth from, this was the setup in all of them. And so there were barriers, like every so often in distance. So you have your stage, and then you have a certain amount of space before there is a barrier, and it continued on that way. So let's say this is the stage, and then you have barrier, 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 barrier. That was sort of the setup, but the barriers only came into use when a certain amount of people were in that space, right? So once like the first quadrant of space was at capacity, security would like set up this barrier. Like it was always there, but it was open and accessible until there was a max capacity that was reached. Then security would block it off and nobody could get in or out from there. If you wanted to exit, you had to go out through the sides. But you couldn't go back and you couldn't go forward any further, if that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining that okay. And so depending on how big the crowd was dependent on how many barriers were set up, right? And this was happening in live time. So as people were coming, they were capping off each of these quadrants. And they were strict about it, which I think is so important. Like in every set I was at, and I was in various parts of like the crowd, like I was at a different distance in every single scenario, and appreciated that because it made me feel a lot safer. And I think it just prevented a lot of potentially dangerous scenarios. So I was so impressed by that setup, and they all seemed to be like really on it because those crowds were big, the stages were big, there were a lot of people there, and it can quickly turn into an ugly thing. And at least in what I noticed and experienced, that didn't happen whatsoever. So really loved the way they handled and managed those crowds. And then a little bit separate from stage safety, but also talking about the stages, the third thing I want to mention is how smart I thought just the overall setups were. So as I mentioned, there were 4 main stages. 2 were close together in both scenario. But okay, so it was like there were 2 together and 2 together, but I don't know how to explain this. Okay, so there were 4 stages. They were split into groups of 2. All 4 stages were not close together. 2 stages were close together, and then the other 2 stages were close together, but you had to walk a good amount to get to one grouping of stages. Feel brain dead trying to explain this. For some reason it's not that complicated, but the words are not coming to me. But anyway, so I really liked the way that they did this, because if you were at a stage, and again it's a grouping of 2 stages together, so if you were at a particular set, there would be a performance happening at that stage. Once that performance was done, automatically a performance at the stage next to it would start. And they would go back and forth all day. So in some cases, you never had to leave. They did a good job of determining what artists would go where. Like the popular pop and indie would be in a certain area, and then like the dance, EDM, electronic would be in that area. So theoretically, you didn't have to take that long walk between those 2 sets of stages. I mean, sometimes you would, right, if you wanted to diversify the portfolio and check out some different things, but I thought that was a great way to save time, right, because you're just ping-ponging from one stage to the other. And when there was one performance happening, the screens from both stages were used, so you could be hanging out at either stage and still feeling like you're a part of that one performance, and you could go pretty far back and away, and pretty much any vantage point you were coming from, you had a good view of the screens and the performances that were happening. So I thought that was really smart, because in my experience, I've been at festivals that was like stage here, another stage way over there, another stage way over there. And so you end up having to leave sets early to try to rush over to get a semi-decent space at a different set, and it's a lot of traveling back and forth. And it's chaotic, and you don't always know where to go. So I thought that was brilliant. And again, those 2 groupings of stages were far enough apart that you didn't hear what was happening at another stage. I've been to festivals where that's been an issue too, where you hear a lot of echo, or you hear a lot of outside noise from another set that's happening at the same time as the one that you want to see. And so I think they actually handled that perfectly within the confines of the park area. So I have nothing to complain about in regards to the way that was set up. And in fact, again, I thought it was pretty brilliant, because that's just not been my experience in the past. So yeah, I had to cover that. Okay. I also want to touch on hydration and the heat. And we're going to get into this when we talk about Lowlights, but I'm just going to like sort of preemptively say that it was really hot 2 of the 3 days. stations, great. There were plenty of vendors selling beverages, great. But a highlight that I want to share, that again, I haven't seen before, were people working for the festival who would walk around on foot throughout the crowds and with carts selling beverages, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, in particular lemonades, which were delicious. But I've never seen someone on foot with like one of those like over the head, what the heck do you call that? Why are words failing me today? One of those like overhead tabletop things where you can like put a bunch of drinks on, whatever. These people were walking through the crowds, and I'm talking like they made it even to the front of the crowd. But that was the beautiful thing, right? Is there was space to do that because there was no overcrowding. So these vendors could make it through the crowds with carts and with their little over-the-head tabletops to sell drinks. Were the drinks free? No, but it meant that you didn't have to leave your concert, your spot in the crowd to go get a drink. People were there selling them to you. But it meant that you didn't have to leave your spot in the crowd to get a drink or to stay hydrated. So I thought that was really cool, and I certainly took advantage of it. Whether you were standing in the crowd or you were sitting in the back in the grass, there were tons of people walking around selling beverages. So in addition to having the water refill stations and the just like the general like vendor tent setups with drinks, you had that as an additional option. So that was really important to me when it was so extremely hot outside. And another highlight that I want to mention in regards to heat was the other ways of cooling down, and they had a mister on site towards the front entrance of the festival, just like over the head mister that you could walk through, and honestly it felt more like a shower, if I'm being honest. It was like a lot of water coming at you, and it was cold, and I did that multiple times per day. Didn't care about my hair, didn't care about my clothes, didn't care about any of it. I ran through that thing, okay? A lot of the time I just went in and I stood in it and I just let the water fall. And it felt so good, and it truly did cool me down for a while. And so that was great. And also on the really hot days, at each of the stages during the performances, they would have sprinklers going off into the crowd. And I thought that was really cool too. I had never seen that. And the sprinklers went really far. And again, they did a really effective job of cooling people down. Because it's important to note that there are a lot of people, and I'm not one of these people, not anymore. I used to be, but there are a lot of people who will camp out, who want to be really close to the front of the stage, and they're staying there all day. And it's hot as hell, and just having that cool, refreshing water, you know, every so often, it really makes a huge difference. So I thought that was really cool. I needed to highlight that as well. Okay. Another thing I haven't seen before is the mix of bathroom types. You go to a festival, you expect mostly to see a bunch of porta potties, and there was that. But there were also real bathrooms too, like nicely kept up bathrooms, real bathrooms with lots of stalls, and I just thought that was super cool. The lines for those were obviously longer. You don't really have lines when there's tons of porta potties everywhere. And to the credit of the festival, they did a good job of keeping those porta potties as clean as humanly possible. There were people in there like constantly trying to like deal with the upkeep of them, but sometimes you just want a real bathroom stall. And so those were nicely kept up as well. Okay. I also want to add that parking was incredibly easy. And for the most was a theme park, was the biosphere. I mean, there were a ton of other things happening on that island completely separate from the festival. Other things that people were driving and parking for. So I was shocked to see at how effective the whole parking process was. And it wasn't free, but it wasn't unreasonable either. We would have all had to pay to take the metro if we were to choose that route, and so carpooling made more sense to us. And it was a short drive from the Airbnb that we were staying in, so no complaints there either. Now I want to emphasize this point about harm reduction. And what I thought was great upon reading the FAQ page for this festival was to see what was permitted into the crowd, right? First and foremost, they said that Narcan was permitted, and that made me so happy. Now, if I've mentioned this before, but if you don't know, I am like the lamest festival goer that you can imagine. I am hyperfixated on taking care of myself and my body, drinking lots of water, getting my electrolytes, using my sun protection and my earplugs and all that. Granted, this is something I believe everybody should do, but I know there are also people looking to have a very different experience when they go to a festival, and that's cool too, So I'm not going to be a person that needs Narcan, but the fact that I could bring it in for somebody else, or that other people know that Narcan will be available to them in the event that they need it, is huge. I think that's huge, because we're not doing this whole like zero tolerance policy thing of saying like no drugs allowed. This isn't happening at the festival, when at the end of the day people are gonna get in the things that they want to get in. Like, I'm sorry, but it's true. Does that mean it can be dangerous and scary and it can cause problems? Yeah, sure, but like, we just know that these things are going to be expected at a festival. Like, that's just the way it is. So I really like this approach of harm reduction, where it's like, okay, yes, you're allowed to bring in Narcan, no questions asked. You are also allowed to bring in cannabis, as long as it was purchased in the country of Canada and it was sealed and you have the receipt. So again, it's like this harm reduction approach of like, sure, you can do this thing, but we want you to do it safely. We want to make sure that what you're bringing in is not laced with something like fentanyl, is not going to cause problems, is not, this sort of like questionable street drug. It's something that you purchased here in Canada that is sealed and you have the receipt. And I just thought that was such a great approach. Again, like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not participating in that, but I just think it's important. And even once you were inside, they had tents set up for people who could test their drugs and make sure there was not fentanyl laced in any of their drugs. No questions asked. And that's not something I've seen at other festivals. And you know what? That could be a more commonly occurring thing now, because we know it is such an epidemic. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that in other places, but I just really appreciated seeing such a forward-thinking approach. Now, I know there are people who are not going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. I understand that it can be a deeply personal topic, and we're all touched and affected by drug use in different ways. Some of us are not at all. Some of us are. I have seen it with lots of family members and friends, and so I appreciate knowing that if somebody needs help, there is support for them there. But again, that's not to dispute that other people will feel differently about that and, have their preferred processes or systems for managing that, right? So just want to name that. But I personally thought to see. Okay. Two other highlights that I want to mention. The response from medics and even from artists performing was incredible. And again, we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to highlight again that it was hot. It was hot as hell. So regardless of how people were taking care of their bodies, whether they were sober or not, it was hot for everybody. It was dangerously hot for everybody in that crowd. You could have been perfectly sober, but super heat intolerant, and you could have needed a medic. The first day of the festival, at every single show, the artists needed to stop their performance to call for a medic. There's no doubt in my mind that much of this was heat related. Because whether or not you're dealing with substances, right, you're still affected by the heat. Whether you're on something or you're sober. So, no doubt in my mind that the heat played a huge role in the amount of help people needed during those shows. So, I was really impressed to see how well the medics handled these cases, getting in and out, and the fact that every single artist was so kind, so respectful, so patient, constantly, pausing their shows to say, please clear space for the medics to get through. Let me know that they're okay. Let me know that they're out of this crowd. We're not starting up again until I know that they're okay. And just being very respectful about the whole thing. And granted, this is how every artist should be, but they're not. Let's be real, they're not. And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think part of this has to do with the whole Astro World Travis Scott backlash that happened not that long ago. If you haven't heard about this, he did everything you're not supposed to do in a crowd, right? If you see people need help, you stop your show. He did not stop his show. He encouraged rowdy behavior. People were needing help. People were getting seriously injured and crushed to death. He did not stop his show. He did not acknowledge these people. He did not provide a safe environment for the people seeing him. And so there were a lot of public lessons learned from that case. And I think maybe because of it, more artists now are like, we are not doing that. We are not letting that happen. But I also think, I don't want to discredit the nature of human beings, and that there are probably a lot of really good people who really do care about their fans and want to make sure they're okay and that they're safe. So maybe some part of it has to do with the recent news of people getting hurt in crowds, but I think a lot of it too just comes from a human level of we want to protect the people who care about us too, right? These are our fans, we should care about them. So anyway, it was just really good to see that support was given when it was needed, that there was respect and compassion for the people who needed assistance, which on those 2 really hot days was often, and that's scary to see and scary to watch, but it's good to know that people were being taken care of quickly as possible. So, the last highlight I want to mention, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure I could think of many more, but we're keeping it to 10 for this particular video, the top 10 highlights, was how cute the merch was. Okay, the merch was so cute. So not surprisingly, they had merch for all of the artists on the days those artists performed, but there was also an Osheaga boutique. And you better believe that I went berserk at the Osheaga boutique. I don't know what it is, but when I see merch at a festival, I just want all of it. And to be fair, I wasn't able to make it to a festival last year, so I had to make up for it this year. Osheaga, 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 Osheaga in white on the top, and this is like a beige cream colored hat, which I don't have currently. Now I do, but I didn't. I have a lot of green and darker colored hats, so I thought we would go with this beigey creamy color. So, love that. And then I also got this jersey, this crazy jersey. So, the front says Osheaga, and the back also says Osheaga. With the number 24 for 2024. And it's this like bubblegum pink and light blue color combo that I really like. And you know, I don't have a ton of places to wear a jersey like this to, but I figure for sporting events and things I can. And when I don't wear it, I kind of want to get one of those, I forget what they're called, but they're like shadow boxes, I think. So if you imagine like a frame with like a glass on the front, but it's bigger than like a photo frame, I kind of want to put this in that box with the back of the shirt on display and just hang it up on my wall. I think that would look kind of cool. I just really love like festival merch and knickknacks and things, so I think that would be a cool thing to do with it. And then I also got a Noah Kahan t-shirt and an Osheaga Festival t-shirt with the lineup on the back. So yeah, I went a little bit crazy with the merchandise, I'm not gonna lie. But I just couldn't help myself. I really couldn't. And I don't regret it, so that's the good part. And it was all in Canadian money, so I'm like, well, in US dollars it's not that much, so it's totally fine. That was my girl math justification, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so let's get into the lowlights now. The lowlights. And just to be totally fair, a lot of these, if not all of these, were really not the festival's fault. But I'm still going to talk about the things that were a bit of a bummer, right? So, as I mentioned twice before, it was so hot. It was so hot. 2 of the 3 days, like heat warning hot, right? And there's literally nothing that the festival could have done about that. Like, listen, it's August, it's summer, it's an outdoor festival. It is what it is. But at the same time, it sucks, right? And for me, I am such a baby when it comes to heat, and I was not well acclimated, and I just feel like I'm a heat intolerant person. I don't know what it is, but I mean, we were just sitting there not even moving at certain points and just dripping in sweat, and that's not the best feeling. And again, there's nothing that the festival could do to change the weather, right? Of course, we know that, but it just puts a little bit of a damper on how you and your body are feeling. There's this one point in the first day that I actually started to panic too. I was in the bathroom and it was so hot in there, on top of being hot outside, and just like not a lot of air circulation, and it got me honestly panicky, especially after seeing so many people being taken away by medics. Like, it's scary. It is what it is. Like, heat-related injuries are serious and can be really serious. Like, heat stroke, not a joke. So I did get a little bit freaked out, but once the peak heat of the day had subsisted, it was great. Once it cooled down, it was great. And Sunday was a very wet and rainy, cloudy day, and that temperature was beautiful. Beautiful. Wish it was like that the whole time. Because then there was was this one part of the festival in particular that was quite bad, but even this I can rationalize, and I'll get into it just for you to have context. So Chappell Roan was one of the performers. If you know anything about Chappell Roan, you know that she had a very recent rise to fame. That's not to say she hasn't been performing and doing her thing for a while, but she has sort of blown up into this mega artist more or less overnight. Like, even she has addressed this. And so, back when Chappell Roan signed her contract for Osheaga, she was at a reasonable time slot, given her popularity at the time, right? She was given like an early afternoon Saturday set. No problem. But by the time Osheaga comes around many months later, that time slot is no longer appropriate for her based on her level of popularity. And so what happens is tons of people rush in early in the day to go see Chappell Roan. And there's not good competition for her. Like, I'm not saying that there weren't other good artists performing at that time, but pretty much everybody who was there in the early afternoon was there to see Chappell Roan. And because of that, after her set ended, there was like this huge rush of people with nowhere to go, nothing to do, more or less. And so everybody's getting food, everybody's filling up on water and waiting quite a while for the next big set. And so had this whole like weird popularity shift not happened when that contract was signed, she would have been put on for a later time in competition with other big artists to sort of split up the crowds in the festival. And this would have also happened again outside of that like peak heat time frame. So even that, I can rationalize the crazy lines and that crazy like swath of people like not knowing where to go. Because I think if they had the chance to do things differently, they would have. But she was sort of locked into that space, and there was just not the ability for her to swap out to another spot, or I think they would have done it. And so that was really the only time things got a little gnarly in terms of like a big crowd being in one place and long lines. Because after that, it felt like things had smoothed over. And that's why they have like competing headliners at different parts of a festival. It breaks up the crowds, and it keeps people going to different vendors in different parts of the festival, if that makes sense. So, not Chappell Roan's fault, not the festival's fault, just how it happened. But that, you know, for those few hours, it was not ideal. Okay, I also want to mention the fact that by the nature of this type of festival, there is no on-site camping. And so you had to come in each day, which meant you had to leave each day. And they also did not permit re-entry, which meant once you were in, you were in. If you left, you were not getting back in that day. So that's a bit of a challenge, because theoretically you could be there for 10, 12 hours, and that's a lot. You gotta like bring everything that you could possibly need for that amount of time. And again, like if you have anxiety, that can feel a little bit like trapping, knowing that you can't leave, or if you leave, you're not going to be able to see everything that you want to see. But like, we know that these types of festivals exist where there is not on-site camping for one reason or another. This space, it's the city of Montreal. They are not set up to accommodate for that. That's not their fault. That's just not the kind of festival it is. There are lots of festivals that do not have on-site camping or lodging. But nevertheless, it makes for extra resources and materials in one place. Like, that's nice too. I don't have to have everything on my person the whole time. But again, like, what I'm comparing is a totally different kind of festival experience. Like, again, it's not their fault that they can't accommodate that. So is it a low light for me on a personal level? Yes, but I cannot blame the festival for that, because I knew going into it that that's not the kind of festival that it was. And finally, this low light is kind of a throwaway, but as is the case with any festival, it's pricey. You spend a lot of money to get your ticket. You spend a lot of money on food, on beverages. If you're me, you spend a lot of money on merch too. It just adds up pretty fast. I haven't looked at my credit card statement yet because I don't want to. And I will eventually, but maybe next week when I get paid. But that's just what it is everywhere you go. Of course, they're going to jack up the prices a little bit because of the need and because they can and because they're trying to make money. And listen, I get it. It's a business. You're paying a lot of expensive artists. It's not cheap to run a festival, and festivals are in high competition with one another. They're dropping like flies. So I get that they need to survive and to thrive, and they need to make money. So it is what it is. But of course, at the end of the day, I do notice the fact that I spend quite a lot of money without even looking. I just know I spend quite a bit of money. But it is what it is, right? That's just part of it. And I'm lucky enough that I can put things on my credit card and just trust that I'll figure it out down the line. Is that a financial tip I suggest you take? No, but I'm okay with it. So anyway, not quite as many lowlights as highlights, and again, I think most of these can be written off and is just sort of a part of the festival experience. But nevertheless, I just wanted to share some of the more like not so fantastic parts of the festival. Okay, so now let's get into my favorite performances. I have 3. I want to share my favorite of each day because it was a 3-day festival, if you recall. And I want to share some honorable mentions as well. And I'm also going to share what I perceive to be the strangest performance of the weekend. We'll get to that in a minute, okay? But first, counting back from my third favorite to my second favorite to my first favorite. Number 3, coming in at number 3, was the one and only Noah Kahan, which I guess you could have guessed because I purchased the shirt that I told you about. But he's coming in at number 3 for a few reasons. First of all, he is a Vermont native. He's from Stafford, Vermont. Many of his songs reference or talk about Vermont. And as you probably know, I live in Vermont. So I just had some pride in seeing his set. Because not a ton of big names come from the state of Vermont. So when it happens, it's exciting. Second of all, he was funny. He was a funny guy. And he sort of prefaced his set by saying that it was not his intention to like make us have a crazy, good, exciting, like a party of a time. He said that his intention was to leave us slightly depressed and a little bit anxious, and I thought that was funny. Like, he said it in a joking way. I enjoyed his sense of humor and his stage presence. But I think what really took the cake for me was that his type of music is very like indie folk, let's call it indie folk. And in Euphoria, which I personally haven't seen, but I knew of the music. I've always been a small Labyrinth fan. Like, I could pick out a handful of songs that I knew and I enjoyed, and when they came on shuffle, I really enjoyed them, you know, that kind of thing, but I'd never seen him perform. I didn't know anything about him, but I saw that he was doing the festival, and I knew I wanted to see him because I thought the performance would be interesting based on what I sort of knew about him as an artist. And my God, he did not disappoint. I am still reeling from that show and thinking about it, and man, I encourage you to go check Labyrinth out because I was just stunned by the whole performance. It was so theatrical in nature with the lights and the imagery and of course the music, and if there's something that I really love and get passionate about, and this is a weird crossover, but the intersection of gospel music and electronic, and he did that so perfectly. And he sings and he raps, and it's just so genre bending, so many unique noises and sounds, and it's beautiful too. Like, he had a gospel chorus up on the stage with him, and it blew my mind. I loved every part of that set, and it was so energizing and full of life. The songs were not slow, they were very dancey. Again, the lights and the imagery, it was all very cool. There was also low-key a lightning show happening, and I was just praying. I was like, please do not cancel this set, do not stop this set because of the lightning. And I swear, Osheaga was like this. And we were all like this. And Labyrinth was like this. Because that lightning show went on for his entire set, and it looked really cool with the music. It was like the perfect background for the type of music, but we all knew that shouldn't have been happening, you know what I mean? My best guess is that it was far enough away that it was okay to keep the performance going, but at the same time, I don't know, Green Day was going at the same time, and maybe they didn't want to cancel Green Day because that was like a huge performance for the festival. And don't get me wrong, I love Green Day, but I've seen them headline before, and I wanted to see something new. That's why I didn't go. I already know Green Day is an incredible performance. So anyway, Labyrinth was awesome, and I think my favorite song he did was called When I R.I.P., and I was literally like the next day looking at YouTube videos of it and like seeing who got videos because I just wanted to see more of it. And again, I've been on like this like listening craze and just finding more Labyrinth songs, and yeah, so I'm in that little rabbit hole right now. That's my number 2. That's my number 2. And now you're probably thinking like, dang, how could there possibly be a number 1? How is Labyrinth a number 2? And I know, I get it. It was close. It was a really close call. But my number 1 came from the closing performance on Sunday night. And I think it's because, well, for a few reasons, but okay. So my number one, not my number 2 or my number 3, not my number 2 or my number 3, but my number 1 is Justice. Now, if you don't know who Justice is or are, they are a French DJ duo. Justice. Justice. And if you're hearing any background noise right now, it is boring. It is absolutely boring. We are currently under a state of emergency because we are getting the remnants of some storm coming up to the state, and so lots of rain coming, and hopefully it doesn't affect the rest of this video, but just giving you a heads up. But I went with Justice because listening to this group since I was maybe 15 or 16. And the first song I ever heard, which remains, I think, their most popular, is called D-A-N-C-E, Dance, 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 Dance. And it goes, do the D-A-N-C-E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stick to the B-E-A-D, get ready to ignite. You are such a B-Y-D, catching all the lights. Just easy as ABC, that's how we make it right. And so I first heard that song in my younger years. And I went to see them when I was 17 at the House of Blues in Boston. And it was an incredible show. Incredible. I fell in love with them even more. And I've been listening since then. And so, of course, when I saw that they were going to be at Osheaga, I had to go. And they closed out the festival on Sunday, and the whole festival, right? Because after Sunday it was over. And so I said to my friends, I was like, I'm so sorry, but I can't leave early on Sunday. I can't do it. I was like, I will drive us back home to Vermont. I'll do the border, I'll do the whole thing. But we're not leaving early. Can't do it. Can't do it. I will be the last one in the crowd for that set. And they understood. They were like, we know. It's fine. They were excited too. And the show was so good. I had the best spot, and I ended up standing in the crowd by myself because I wanted to get there a little bit early. Not too early, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't in the back. And so I was like, I'll meet you guys there later. Wow, it is really boring. Wow, wow, do you hear that rain? Y'all, I'm so tired of the weather this summer. Holy smokes. Okay. Trying to not be terrified by that. I totally forgot what I was saying. But anyway, okay, so I found my own place in the crowd, and I was near a barrier on the side, and I had just squeaked in to the front sort of area before they put up the first barrier. So I was in the back of that first part, that first controlled area, and so I had plenty of room to dance. I didn't feel nervous at all. And I just danced the whole time, and I have to tell you, I was jumping up and down like crazy, and I hadn't jumped that much since my injury. Not only was I jumping and dancing and moving around, but it didn't hurt. And I think a lot of it was mental, too. You know what I mean? Like, so much of it is like, what is the word? Not physiological, but it's like, maybe physiological is a good word for it. Like, a lot of times I feel like I do things that hurt, and it might be because I'm hyperfixating on the fact that I had surgery, and I'm like, trying to get back into it. But I was just in such a good mood at that show that I feel like I felt no pain anywhere. And not to be TMI, but like I had a lot going on. I was like cramping, and I just a whole lot, but I felt like a 10 out of 10, and I was going crazy for that whole set, and it was long. It was an hour and a half at least, a little longer. I think they went overtime, and it just was so good. And I had my little Apple Watch on, and I was just checking in, and I saw that like towards the end my heart rate was at, I think, 170 something. It was pretty high. That's pretty high. Zone 3 for me is like 150, and that's a workout. So I got it up to 170 because I was more or less doing like jumping jacks at one point. I just jumping. Just having the best time. They played all of my favorite songs, and they did some really incredible new mixes with a song called Stress that I really like. supposed to as performers. I mean, they're just locked in, they're keyed in, glued in, just doing their little thing on their little soundboards. Like, they're not, like hyping up the crowd, they're locked in. But it's what's happening around them that is so cool and so impressive and so much fun. So it was just an incredible show. Just incredible. And yeah, we stayed till the very end, and as they were doing their last few songs, people were starting to leave because, again, the crowds getting out are crazy. And as people would come out, I would inch up and 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 inch up. And for the last song, the two of them were kind of like walking through the front of the crowd and signing things, so I got even closer and I got to see them, and I was pretty close to the front by the end of the show. And I just soaked it all in, just loved every moment of it, and was probably, I wasn't the last one out of the crowd, but I took my time. I waited until everything was done before I went and found my friends. And when I found them, they had just as much fun as I did, and they were like, wow, that was so incredible. And so it was worth it, and I listened to their live album, Across the Universe, on my drive home, and I was amped, wired, pumped. I was doing good. I was so wide awake. We didn't get home until close to 3 in the morning. Why we didn't stay an extra night, I don't know. We just kind of cheaped out and said, whatever, let's just do the Sunday night, head straight home kind of thing. It was fine, but I was tired for sure. Could have stood to stay another night. Next time I probably would, but whatever. It was fine. So just a really excellent way to close out the festival, close out the night. I was in 7th heaven, just loving that performance. So that's why it's my number one, for nostalgia purposes, for dancing purposes, for how good I felt just being in that space. I got some good videos and loved seeing other people's videos. So that's why it's my number one. So number 3, Noah Kahan. Number 2, Labyrinth. Number 1, Justice. All incredible performances, and those were not the only incredible performances I saw. As I mentioned, I do have some honorable mentions that I'd like to share. They were still up there, but they didn't make the top 3. Okay, so Hozier. I had seen him twice before, so 3 times now at Osheaga, and he's just always incredible, right? He had a nice long set, and I made it for most of that set. I left before his last song, which of course was Take Me to Church, but I got to hear pretty much all of it aside from that. But that's why I had to leave a little bit early, was to get over to see Justice, so that's why I missed the last song. So he was great as always. Two Door Cinema Club I saw for the first time, and that was so nostalgic for me. It was sort of during golden hour, and the vibes were just great. They put on a good performance. Chapel Roan, this was my first time seeing her, and she was so much fun. My roommate was super excited for Chapel, and we were in the crowd for that one. I was also in the crowd for Two Door and for maybe half of Hozier. But Chapel was great. Everybody doing the hot to go dance was so fun. Her visuals were fun, and her outfit was fun. Just a really good time. She has an incredible voice, so I'm really glad I got to see her, and I would totally see her again. Renee Rapp I saw in the crowd because my other friend really wanted to see her, and I thought she was good. Not my favorite all-time performer, but fun. She has a good voice. She did a good job. Yeah, so honorable mention there. Martin Garrix I saw for the first time, and he was surprisingly good to me. Not that I thought he wouldn't be, but sometimes EDM sets can be a little too repetitive for me, a little monotonous. bangers. It was fun. We didn't stay for the entire set because it was towards the end of the night and we were really tired and just ready to go. But we listened to a lot of it and it was pretty good. And last but not least, honorable mention to Teddy Swims, who has an incredible voice. He does a lot of bluesy vocals, I would say. Just incredible, funny, wholesome guy. Would definitely see him again too. So yeah, it was a really well-rounded festival with lots of different genres and genre bending and just eclectic and really amazing. Strangest performance. And as you know, it is not my intention to offend anybody, so if you totally love this artist, I'm not throwing any shade. I'm just still processing what I saw. Okay, that's all. Melanie Martinez. I just don't even know. There's a lot that I loved about her performance. I like her beats. I like the music. Very theatrical. She put on a performance, right? That was a show. The thing that gets me, that I'm still trying to process and understand, is the way she weaves in childhood-like themes, and very adult themes. I think there's a way to do it. She uses a lot of metaphors. It's clearly intentional. But I also think that you are walking a very fine line when you are repeatedly talking about children, using childlike metaphors, dressing up as children, using childhood imagery, and then again, like I said, tying in very adult themes as an adult. I don't know. Again, I think it's very creative and artistic, and I think there's a way to do it. I do feel a certain way about tying in a lot of those adult and childhood themes together. And in a lot of ways, the performance had some spooky, gory elements. And again, you have those adult themes, and I think you have to be really careful about not sexualizing childhood elements. And I'm not saying that that was her intention in any way to do that. But again, I think you walk a fine line, and I think it can be interpreted in that way in some cases. So I was watching this performance in both amazement and horror because, again, I was just trying to understand what I was seeing and the metaphors I was hearing and all of it. That said, it was a really interesting, creative show. Sorry, my stomach is making noise. I'm hungry. But it was different. It was definitely different. Not what I was expecting. Especially, she performed she's on her trilogy tour, so she's, featuring her top songs from 3 albums. And the first 2 are called Cry Baby and K through 12, so those have a heavy childhood influence. A lot of childhood imagery, metaphors, themes, etc. So I don't know. It just had me feeling some type of way, and maybe wrongfully so. It's just my opinion. I know she has a massive fan base, so again, I'm not here to claim anything or make anyone feel upset or anything like that. It was just a very unique, different performance. So it left me feeling, I don't know, a lot of different ways, I guess. But anyway, so overall, back to my review, my rating of Osheaga. I had the best time. Despite some of those lowlights, it was a really incredible festival. Now, I'm really bad at doing a 1 to 10 say like what a 10 would look like if I had to put a 10 on something, I would give it to the Firefly Music Festival from 2014. So way back in the day, and that is simply because in my time there, I avoided all of the lowlights that I mentioned at this festival. And again, those lowlights are not the fault of the festival, but just because everything worked out in such a way that I can't think of any lowlight or bad moment from my time at that festival in 2014, if that makes sense. So I'm talking like you need all the stars to align for a 10 out of 10. So an 8 is still very good, still very close. Like, again, food was incredible. Safety was top notch. I loved the layout. I loved the merchandise. I loved all of the elements of the festival, right? But again, at the end of the day, you're at a festival in a major city. There are certain limitations that come along with that. That's just what it is. And again, like, no control over a heat wave, but that takes a notch or two down for me. Because there is some degree of suffering in that. But anyway, it's all good, it's all love. If you went, let me know what you thought. If you've been to other festivals, let me know what you thought. There are other festivals that I certainly want to explore in the coming years, and I want to do it sooner rather than later because it's hard on the body. And as you get older, it feels harder, so that can also be why I'm giving my 2014 festival experience a 10. I was a lot younger then. I was not as hyperfixated on hydration and sun protection and ear protection and eating balanced meals. And don't get me wrong, like, I still cared about those things, but when you're younger, you just feel a little bit more invincible. As I age, I'm like, ooh, that's gonna hurt tomorrow, or that's gonna hurt right now, or I'm gonna regret doing that or not doing that. So it's just a part of the process, right? But anyway, let me know what your experiences are, especially if you've been to festivals like Lollapalooza, Bonnaroo, Coachella, Austin City Limits. Those are some of the festivals I've been doing more exploring of because I've gone to festivals close to me. So like Governor's Ball, Firefly, Panorama, The Meadows, now Osheaga. Festivals like much more local to me. So if I'm going to travel at some point to go to one of those others, I just want to hear feedback, opinions. I want to know that it's worth it, because it's not only is it expensive, but then you're including travel, like much more intensive travel for me coming from Vermont. So anyway, let me know what you think. I hope you've been doing so well. I hope this rain is not too disturbing in the background. I never know, I can never tell. But I've been jibber-jabbering for quite a while, which no surprise to me or to you, likely. And I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. Let me know what else you want to see in future videos. I am back here for a bit. No other big travel things happening for a little while, so hopefully I can get back into the zone and create some new content or fulfill some more requests. So let me know what you're thinking. And as always, if you've